This video is going to be about what I've been calling the perspective of insanity, and then also some things that I probably have mentioned before when it comes to projection that I see a lot in the homeless community and even from people who have been through a whole bunch of stuff but still haven't really managed to learn the lessons from what happened to them. Not because what happened to them was necessarily their fault, but it's just really obvious that they didn't take what they should have taken out the situation out. So I did try to make a video about this, I don't know if that was yesterday or days ago, to be truthfully honest, but I don't really like how it came out. I feel like it was kind of my usual ramble, but probably worse. Probably like one of my old abuse evidence channel videos. Because for one, I was kind of half asleep anyway. I did write a couple things down to try to somewhat stay on topic somehow. But yeah. So my idea of the perspective of insanity is pretty much just like how somebody's only considered insane based on biases and their situation and what they look like and how they sound, their living situation, their education or quote unquote education, their job, gender, I guess, things like that. So one example that I remember giving the first time I tried to make this video is the Nikola Tesla dude. And of course I know that these people are only pushed down people's throats and into people's memories for certain reasons, and that they didn't really discover the things that people say they did. But this is just an example for the sake of the video so it'll make sense. So Nikola Tesla did the things that he did and said the things that he said. But if he would have done and said those same things of being homeless, then he would have just been what would they call him? A homeless, crazy person who thinks he knows something, but he doesn't because he's broke. Or if he wouldn't have, I don't know if he went to school or not. Probably not, because the people in these bloodline families, they commonly end up being able to get around the whole school system thing and still somehow become billionaires for obvious reasons if you know about this stuff. But let's say so let's say he did go to school. If he even did, I don't know. No, I'm saying this all wrong. Let's say he didn't. I don't know how to make this make sense, but let's say he didn't. And then he was saying all the things that he was saying. And people would have been like, who is this dude that thinks he knows something but hasn't been to school and has quote unquote no education? Those things that people like to say. Or if he was dark skinned, then he would have been a crazy person. Oh, and another example that I used the first time I tried to make this, the Martin Luther example. So of course, Martin Luther was somebody who branched off from the pagan Roman Catholic Church and then created the pagan Protestant bullcrap hijacking. So if Martin Luther would have been dark skinned, he would have been locked up somewhere, diagnosed with religious fervor. And I could make a whole nother video about how white supremacists see quote unquote black people as crazy religious people. Especially the liberal ones, but that's a whole nother story. So yeah. Those are two examples of what was I calling it? The perspective of insanity. And so now I'm about to go in to, I guess, two stories. So, there was this whole scenario that I'm going to try to summarize where, like, I was at the bus stop and then some other homeless person had uh, did the stereotypical paranoid schizo homeless person stuff, which of course people's idea of schizophrenia or schizoism, I guess, is like it's really plain because for one, as I've said in a couple other videos, no one ever talks about this, but schizophrenia is actually a spectrum. And of course, as I always say, or at least I used to talk about more, mental illness comes from trauma. Although if you know about the food industry, you'll know that there's also a type of schizophrenia that um, comes from like it's pretty much another form of diabetes, kind of like how dementia and Alzheimer's are. So it comes from sugar, but I'd still say that that's not really that common. And even if like somebody did get it from that more so, I would still say there's probably some trauma in there because usually schizophrenia has a usual it's usually created by something similar to how personality disorders and DID is, but that's a whole nother topic. So anyway, just to put that out there. This dude was doing the stereotypical paranoid homeless person stuff, and he was quote unquote making sure I didn't want to steal his crack that he left sitting on the ground. And so he went on the usual rants that people out here go on, homeless or not, with the whole covert racist, white savior, liberal stuff where they're very racist. And then he was like, I didn't even know you were a little girl at first. I thought you were some Asian dude I was gonna have to kick in the face. And so he was talking about the whole how he thought I was some Asian dude that he needed to kick in the face for a while. And then he started talking about how he just really didn't know and he has to kill other people before they kill him because he doesn't want anybody to kill him. So he'd rather kill the other person first. And that just made me think of a whole bunch of situations that I had been in or seen happen with different perpetrators throughout my life. Not even just like relatives, but like uh, cash for kids system staff that were like really paranoid. In fact, I didn't even mention this one the first time I made this video. When I was in the self-confined placement that my mom had got me put in, the Miss B lady, I actually still have a video of this. Obviously not on this channel or not up public, but there was this whole situation where like this boy in the class, rest in peace because he died like some years ago, he was playing some music and then Miss B was like, you don't scare me. Whatever messages and signals you're trying to send to me to send a signal to scare me isn't gonna scare me because I blah 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 blah. Because I don't remember what all she was saying. Because for one, most of that stuff is repressed memory. So like, it's not even that I really remember all these situations like that. I remember watching the videos of the situations, but like how I felt or even the fact that it really happened is kind of like lost in my subconscious. And honestly, that was probably one of the least worst things that happened in the self-confined. Luckily, they didn't put our hands on us, but honestly, that probably would have been better than the stuff that they did do. But yeah, so there was that situation. But also, this thing with this homeless dude reminded me of a lot of things that my mom's boyfriend and my dad have done and said. So I remember specifically with my mom's boyfriend, because he had the Jezebel Leviathan and other marine spirits, all the ones that go along with quote unquote narcissism, stupid term, but all those. And those kind of make people like really paranoid and stuff. For similar reasons to a certain spectrum of schizophrenia, but anyway, we'd be in the car and like if people were driving behind us, he started swerving and pulling over and driving all crazy because he would feel like people were following us, even though we were on the highway. But yeah, so there was it. Also reminded me of this thing that my dad would say to me, because he got shot a couple times, and I remember, like, if I was walking behind him or something like that, he'd get paranoid and he'd be like, "No, don't walk or stand behind me. I don't like that because I feel like I'm getting shot again." And I find that kind of interesting because, like, the second time he got shot, the dude was in front of him. So, but yeah, there was that. And the whole situation with him getting shot that second time was because he felt like he could talk to people crazy the same way he talks to me, where people don't really know what he's talking about. So, yeah, there was that situation. And what I'm saying all this to say, did I say that right? I think so. Is that if my relatives or other abusers would have been homeless, they would have been labeled off as a crazy, homeless, risk to society person that needs to be locked up somewhere or involuntary committed. But because they're not homeless, or they weren't homeless and weren't on drugs, they're fine, quote unquote. And that's just something that I've thought about a lot. Like, the stereotypical paranoid homeless person is no different than most of the people I met in functional society. In fact, a lot of the people I've met are more decent than most of the people I met in functional society. And that says a lot about a lot of stuff. So, okay, wait a minute. I talked about that. I'm reading the list right now. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about. This could honestly probably be a video of its own, but okay. Just beg your parents to take you back. It's not worth it, or it's not that serious, quote unquote. And then also, to go along with that, another quote unquote, I'm on drugs, so you will be too eventually. This is something that I hear a lot, and that I'm sure other people in situations like me will do, where people will be like, "You're so young, and you're still supposed to be having a little bit of a childhood, and uh, go back to wherever you came from because you don't want the street life." First of all, I don't even consider myself in the streets, and you could be in the streets and still have a house and stuff. In fact, that's the majority of the stereotypical street life, is people who have houses, but they go out and they sell drugs and rob people and stuff. I don't even really like the term street life, because street life means that you're hanging around people you shouldn't be, doing things you shouldn't be, with people you shouldn't be, and you're also places that you shouldn't be at times you shouldn't be, things like that. And I guess one of the main things I could say about this is, for one, is projection. The idea that pretty much because you're on drugs, everybody else is on drugs or will be on drugs. That's projection. And it also just shows that they haven't really learned their lesson, and they just feel like this is it, this is the only way. So because in their mind this is the only way, because they haven't learned their lesson, this is everybody else's only way. So the only way to avoid doing what they do is to go put yourself in another bad situation, instead of actually finding some way somehow to pull yourself up from your bootstraps and actually handle things. Because like the idea that you should run back to a bad situation with bad people to not do drugs just shows that you don't really see any way out of anything without bad coping mechanisms, and either leeching off of people who don't give a crap about you and will probably kill you eventually, or killing yourself pretty much. Which honestly, both of those options are suicide either way. That just shows that they really haven't learned their lesson. And this is commonly said by people out here whose parents are like dead already, and they have that that abuse cognitive dissonance, where like once people's parents die, they want to act like none of the stuff that happened was really that bad, or like it didn't happen at all, which some people never come out of cognitive dissonance, whether their abusers are dead or not. And I'm not saying like hate anybody, obviously. That's not what I push. But cognitive dissonance is just, for one, it goes along with codependency and manipulation. What you're really saying is, I don't really feel like I can survive without these people, so I'm just gonna leech off of them and let them beat on me while I live in their house and eat their food, and let them do whatever they do to me, depending on whatever your situation was. Or I'm gonna run back to my traffickers. I'm gonna run back to the Cash for Kids system, depending on how old you even are, and hope they take me in and throw me in some facility where I'm getting tied to beds and essayed because I don't think I can do anything on my own. That's pretty much all that really is right there. And it's really annoying. It also kind of reminds me of this stuff that people say who aren't in these situations and haven't been, where they're like, you just think that stuff is sweet. And now I'm having flashbacks to this whole Let Me Help You Lunatic lady I met some years ago. Don't even want to go into that story. It wasn't like really that bad, but she was the usual Let Me Help You Lunatic who had her own stuff that she was ignoring pretty much. So anywho, quote unquote, you just think that stuff is sweet, and you think that you could just run out here and travel, I guess. That's not something that was said to me though. The travel thing was said to somebody else, because I've been pretty stagnant for multiple reasons, but I'm not going to go into that. So anywho, you think you can just run around here and travel and forage, and you're away from home, and I know you have some parents or family somewhere, and you need to stop trying to be grown and sit yourself down somewhere, and you're a child and you don't know what you want, and I could keep going really, but it's like, it's a lot of projection, it's a lot of ageism, it's also a lot of I know your situation better than you do. And it's not even, in fact, that's not even really the issue. That's not even the issue. The real issue is that people are acting like people are choosing to be in these situations in the first place. These are literally last ditch effort situations. And to be truthfully honest, ever since I was 5, 6 years old, I honestly always saw myself living outside for a lot of reasons, and I always liked outside. But for one, due to the different things that happened to me, like my health isn't all the way up the part for that, really. And then the other thing is that, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and it's like the situations that make people end up out here aren't good. Like, you escaped the Cash for Kids system or got kicked out of some Cash for Kids system placement. You're a dumped out foster kid, which of course that's a part of the Cash for Kids system. You got kicked out, if I didn't already say that. You ran away from lower level Cash for Kids system trafficking or higher level trafficking. Things like that. That's like the majority of people out here. And people aren't like choosing to be out here. And even when like you see those old Street Kid or Streetwise documentaries of kids who are like homeless 8-year-olds running around Atlanta or New York or LA, or teenagers who are doing that from like the 70s or whatever, even the kids in those videos who are saying that they quote unquote just wanted to live their life how they wanted to, and that's pretty much what I'm saying, is that's probably not true. They're probably really just saying that because they don't want to go into detail on what really happened to them. And what else was it? They just don't want to make their parents look bad, so they'd rather look like the bad guy. So they'd rather just say, well, I just didn't want to wash the dishes or something stupid like that. As if somebody's really going to be like in most of the situations that people are in because they didn't want to wash the dishes or something. Because to be truthfully honest, I've been really safe out here, but most people they've already been like assaulted 10 times and stuff. I haven't had anything happen to me, but most people have. Like within the first, or supposedly the statistics say within the first 24 to 48 hours of somebody running away or getting kicked out or whatever, they're already approached by traffickers and things like that. And I don't know what I was about to say about that, but yeah. So that's kind of the issue with that. It's like there's a whole bunch of projection and blame shifting and guilt trippy type stuff, but no one actually talking about what to do to solve the issues that are going on with like youth homelessness or general, really honestly solving issues before it even gets to the point of somebody having to like run and hide and be at risk of getting thrown in jail over some bull crap, be at risk of being put into higher level trafficking if they've already been in lower level, or be at risk of being trafficked again if they've already been in lower and higher level, because a lot of people have. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, it's not easy. Honestly, nothing's ever really easy. Some people's lives have been a little bit more easy than others, but let me not even go into that topic. That could be another video. I was about to talk about the whole thing where, like, in modern society, parents don't prepare their kids for their death. So, like, once the parents die, the kids go into, like, a psychotic break and they don't know what to do, and everything goes downhill from there. And I know people are probably going to be like, well, I mean, you haven't really had like parents or anything, so you wouldn't really know how it feels. I'm not trying to say people shouldn't be upset, but I'm just saying like pretty much people are infantilized and adultified, or youth are infantilized and adultified all at the same time. Like, I have some people saying, well, you're still a child this and you're still a child that, and I don't want to hire anybody who's high school age and a whole bunch of other things like that. But then I had the police telling me you need to be an adult and figure out your life and stuff like that. So, or no, not even just that. Or the whole thing where like I used to say this all the time, especially starting in like what was that, 2022. You're a child up until the point where somebody wants to sexually assault you. But that's the whole video of its own. So yeah, there's that part too. Anyway, circling back to the whole um go back to wherever you came from or go back to your parents. Which for one, that's kind of like a wild statement with the fact that, especially in this area, a lot of the people out here who are homeless are foster kids. But anywho, circling back to that, this also goes into something else that I wanted to talk about. Hanging on to relationships or quote unquote relationships for a place to stay. So, something that I realized throughout my life, especially now that I actually know the different definitions of homelessness, is that a lot of people are pretty much homeless, or they're like hanging on to a place to stay from like a thin string because they're dating people for places to stay. Like, there's so many people that would never be called the crazy drug addict bum or whatever because they're constantly getting into relationships over and over again for places to stay. So, like, they date one person for 2 weeks and they date another person for 2 weeks, and then that's 3 kids. Wait, could that happen? I guess that could well, I don't really know how that works, sadly, unfortunately. But let's just say that's 3 kids. They date one person for 2 months, and then they claim they're gonna marry that person to stay a little longer. That's 5 kids. And the cycle goes on. In fact, there's this other thing I was supposed to say in the video that I never ended up making. which kind of goes along with Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. Oh my gosh, where he was like, um, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so I started thinking about when I was like 5 and I was shoving this bead up my nose, cause I don't know, I guess I didn't have anything else to do. So I shoved this bead up my nose like a hair bead, and then that first time I went to the hospital, I still have like a little bit of memories from this of having like this drill stuck up my nose and getting a plastic bag with a bead in it and some blood all over it. It's like that's kind of like a chopped up memory too. I don't know if I was supposed to be under anesthesia, but that thing it actually kind of hurt. It didn't hurt that bad, but it hurt. And I don't know if I was supposed to not feel. Okay, actually that's irrelevant. So, anywho, I went to the hospital, and then the second time I showed the bead up my nose. My dad was like, I don't have time for this. And then he told me to stand over the toilet and try to blow the bead out of my nose. I don't know why over the toilet. And so I had thought of this whole concept where dating, as people call it these days, dating is like shoving a bead up your nose over and over again and expecting different results. You know, there's that part. I don't know. I just needed a moment of silence, I guess. So, anywho, uh, try to think of some examples. Okay, I think I thought of something else I could say. So, a lot of the people I've seen in situations like this, which was a lot of people I've met throughout my life, to be honest, they're the type that talk junk about homeless people or people who are like traveling or living quote unquote dangerous lifestyles, I guess as people would call it, even though these relationships are dangerous lifestyles. They will say things like, I can never be a bum and I can never be homeless, and they're all on drugs, but dating is your drug, and honestly dating is prostitution too. And they say all those things, but honestly they are homeless. They probably just don't know like all the dang, all the definitions of homelessness to know they're homeless. So ignore that. um what else was it? See, I had examples last time, but now I don't. Wait a minute. I can't remember all the things that I said in the last try of this video, but I do remember this thing I used to hear people say a lot, which is true. And it was something like, to really be able to afford a place, you need at least two people's income plus. And so that's another reason that people will like get into relationships or hang on to codependent, trauma bond, limerence obsessed relationships for a place to stay. And this circles back to the whole thing I was saying earlier about people saying things like, just beg your parents to take you back, and whatever happened, they'll forgive you, and it's not worth it, and promise them that you'll like go to school or whatever. And yeah, so kind of like zoning out. But one thing I could say about, or another thing I could say about that actually, is that another way that that's projection is they're assuming that, one, they're assuming everybody had parents. Two, they're assuming that, I mean, I guess maybe they got kicked out, so they assume that you got kicked out and that you did something and that you need to like go beg for forgiveness from somebody. And honestly, that probably wouldn't even work for like most kicked out scenarios, because I've met a couple people out here who are like, they're not, I mean, they're homeless somewhat, but not really, but they're just foster kids who are kicked out all the time. or just people who are kicked out all the time in general. And it seems like their parents won't really take them back. And of course, it's a messed up situation, but that just says something about the parents, especially since, like, a lot of the people I've met in situations like this were adopted from Egypt or Haiti or some other state or some other country, and they were like the token Asian kid in the family of rich racist white people who just want them to like scrub the basement and stuff. So not only would begging for forgiveness to be let back in not work for everybody, but to be truthfully honest, most situations that you get kicked out of or have to escape, you shouldn't go back to anyway. And that kind of goes into the whole thing. Oh no, did I finish what I was last saying? I don't even know. Oh man, I do this every single video. But yeah, anywho, you just have to accept that you have to figure things out for yourself. And I mean, a lot of people do end up stuck after they like get kicked out or whatever. Like a lot of people, they're like 90 something, 80, 70, 40. They've been out here since they were 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 15. But I mean, you can't really, what's that saying? Two wrongs don't make a right. You're either going to figure things out or you're going to try to run back and be somebody's trauma bond codependent. And to be truthfully honest, if your situation was really worth leaving, you don't have anywhere to go back to anyway. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Like, it's kind of like how people who've been in the cash for kids system their whole life, they don't know anything else other than not being allowed to work, not being allowed to cook when they want, not being allowed to shower when they want, or go to sleep when they want, being told when to wake up, having people watch them use the bathroom. So the only thing that they know to do is to get put in prison, or they end up in prison with no fault of their own for other reasons. And they just like it there better because that's all they're ever used to. And also for a lot of people, being in adult jails or adult prisons is the safest they've ever felt actually, because they're so used to like other horrors, especially in like the cash for kids system branches. Not that the adult prison system isn't a part of the cash for kids system as well, but it's like even with all the horrors that do happen, because it seems like a Virgo Vasal trauma-based mind control buck breaking fest, which is done by design. But even with all the things that do happen, the adults still have somewhat, well, they have a lot more rights than people in any youth jail or youth cash for kids system placement or institution. So I mean, there's that. But that's what that reminds me of. Pretty much, I don't know how to do anything else, so I'm just going to go back to jail. Or I'm going to go back to prison. That's pretty much what they're saying. And hopefully this made some type of sense.